Your players are always going to do exactly what you want them to do. They're never going to go off the rails. And as a dungeon master, you want them to go down a certain path at all times. But how do we avoid railroading? It's the age-old question. And what is railroading? Those are the things we need to consider. So let's talk about it. How do we get players to do what we need to do them to do without railroading? Offer multiple paths. The number one way to avoid railroading is to not just give one path. Allow the players choices, but don't allow them, what do you do? Do you choose to go down the left path or do you choose to go down the right path? I know that sounds simple, but as a new dungeon master, giving your players choices and options is completely within the bounds of the games. It will allow them to still have choice, but for you to keep them between the bumpers at least. Because if we're playing a module, if we're playing something where you have something prepped, we have to be in agreement, a social contract that we're trying to do this as a game together to go and play and move forward. It's not railroading, but still having multiple paths will allow that. Now, when you get better at dungeon mastering, you have plenty of practice in, 3 or 4 paths that you present, still allowing your player to always choose the 5th path, which is none of the ones you've chosen. That takes improv and practice, but by giving choices, you can sometimes, and most often, limit which direction they go. Food for thought. Another great way to avoid railroading, player-driven plots. If your players go where they want to go, and you as the dungeon master simply put things in front of them, that's fantastic. This takes improv skills. I love player-driven campaigns. I love getting together and finding out why a group of people is together to begin with. If the player has strong cohesion and they're going to adventure and they have motivation as a party, the player is going to choose to do things. When you have a party, it's like, well, we're not motivated. We're going to stay here at the bar. That has nothing to do with the game. And as a dungeon master, that's where we feel like we have to push the players to move forward. When the players are motivated in session 0 to do things and have motivations and try to accomplish something, wealth, loot, dungeon delving, killing evil, helping the local economy, whatever it may be, those players are the ones that have the motivation. That's a player-driven campaign. So if you can get the players motivated to take action on their own, all you have to do as a dungeon master is set up the dominoes. If you're paying attention to what the players want, all you got to do is tip one of those over. If they then divert, are the players messing with you, or that really what their characters would do? That's the question and another conversation to have. Another way to avoid railroading is balances and consequences. What do I mean by that? Players that think that being able to have free will without consequences is free will within the Dungeons & Dragons games is not true. If I and us, we went to go and meet with the king, and that king decided that, well, I'm going to pay you to go and do this thing, and then you later on go and do something else, and you're not following instructions from the king anymore, there will be consequences to that. The king is probably not all benevolent, and even if they are, they're probably no longer very happy with you because they hired you to do a task. Now, in some cases, we'll pay you when you get done. But what about the cases where, hey, there's expenses. We have expenses going on this adventure. We need half up front. And then you choose not to do that, and you pocket the money. There are consequences to your actions. This is the balancing act. Consequences are not railroading. It's your free will as a player having these things happen to you. And if you start the game with this idea that, yes, you can choose to do what you want to do, but if you choose to enter into a contract, maybe they're signing contracts with devils. Maybe the Adventurers Guild has a way to sign in blood that where if you actually don't go and do and work on that contract, you start suffering levels of exhaustion. Well, that's railroading. Well, maybe not. Maybe that's an interesting way of the players all of a sudden being forced to go do something they didn't want to go do, and now they find out the Adventurers Guild is not who they thought it would be. If the players just leave the scenario, well, you can do that, but you're going to have to figure out how to break that contract first, right? You still have the choice. How are you going to do that? How are you going to break that contract? Well, we're going to find a devil. Devils know more about contracts than anyone else, right? Depending on your world. So use that balances and consequences. You can't just nail someone with consequences, but this other time, you can't just give someone complete and total free will. It's a balancing act between the two. Food for thought. How would you use this, but not take away player agency? I'm curious to know how you would use it. A and B are the results of C. When you do that, it feels very, if you can see it coming. Meaning, if I kill the king, hey, everything's great. If I don't kill the king, hey, everything's bad. What happens if I almost kill the king? What does he do? What happens if we kill the king and his brother takes over because I didn't deal with that? You don't have to come up with the answers to all these things all at once. You can have something happen and it looks like, hey, this is the outcome. And then later something shows up that the players did not deal with. The players did not consider. When you're going through the game, their actions, all the things the players do, all the people that they let go, all the people they helped, write them down. Write down how the players hindered them, how the players hurt them. And all of a sudden, the action at the end is affected by things below after the fact. You don't have to have all the answers right away. In fact, a lot of times when we do something, we have this big, hey, this is what's happening. This is the way it's going. And that's the way it starts to go. But then all of the little consequences of all the little things, all the reactions the world will give to all the things the players have done start showing up into that. You can add those in later on as a dungeon master. That makes it so it's not bilateral. You're no longer railroading. And the thing is, it allows you to influence the outcomes later on so you don't have to come up with it on the spot. So this really helps you by not having those diversive bilateral outcomes, because it never is, when you take everything the players have done into account. Food for thought. How would you use that? How would you change an outcome that looks one way, but because of something the players have done in the past, you have those scenarios, but you've just left those actions sitting back there. And this action here sits on its own. How would you have changed it now that you have that information? I'm curious. Take feedback from your players. The best way to avoid railroading is to talk to your players, not your characters, your players. If your players feel like they're being railroaded, and they tell you, we feel like we're being railroaded down this, why is that? Do you guys not want to go down here based upon this? This is where I thought we were going. Have those conversations for God's sake. You will be amazed at the games you get to create as friends on the table when you are talking about the game outside of the game. That doesn't mean give away spoilers. That doesn't mean you tell your players you're doing what you're doing for the reason why you're doing. Don't do that, because if you say, I'm trying to get you guys to go do this because I want you to meet this BBEG, and the players like, we don't care. And then all of a sudden you talk to your players and they want to go this way. Guess what? That way can still have the BBG. But if you told them that they need to go this way to meet the BBEG, when you put the BBEG over here, now it looks like railroading. The reality is, if they say, we don't want to go that way, okay, which way do you want to go? We want to go this way. Well, how would the BBEG influence this path? It's a different path. It's a different series. But the BBEG does not have to change. It can still influence what's happening here. You can keep your BBEG. You don't have to rehash everything. But this is when you take players' feedback, players' input. So guys, that is kind of my 5 tips of how to avoid railroading with some very broad ways of doing things, ways that, are more conceptual than they are very specific. By not utilizing A and B outcomes, by allowing the players' actions to make a difference in anything they choose to do, and at the same time having complete free will without consequences, that's not railroading. Railroading is not just because the guards come after you when you kill that guy on the side of the street. That's not railroading. That's consequences to your actions. And so food for thought on there. And I hope this was helpful for you guys. And as always, like the subscribe button, hit the like bell, make sure you share or comment what you would or wouldn't do. All the things to help grow our channel. And we will see you guys next time.